So, good morning and good evening. Welcome to the Circle of Harmony. And this week, too, we are exploring the topic of courage, true courage, and hope to delve into it more so that we can identify and maybe, aspire and pray for more courage because we do need courage in so many, ways and forms and situations we might not even know. But, it's like we keep stopping ourselves. Yeah. So just invoking the divine's presence and grace as we begin with the session. As always, with more sincerity and aspiration, asking for suppleness, receptivity, and the courage to be what I can be, or to unbecome what I don't need to be. Thank you. So there was an article, there was this thing about courage that I had found last time, which we couldn't go through. So maybe we can start with that today. It was really nice. Before that, if there's any question, anything, any reflection on courage, it would, please, as usual, feel free to unmute and share. Found it. Sorry. Yeah, so it's from the Delhi branch, so it's on their website. The title is Courage, the Many Hues and Views of Courage, the Call Beyond. I don't know what exactly is the source. So this is a flower which mother has named Courage. Bold, it faces all dangers. Calotropis gigantea, I don't know. So this is the article that I had liked and I think it was reflective. So if we can take one paragraph at one time and then just stop briefly for reflection. So if anybody would want to read it, if they have the capacity, they can. Otherwise, I'll read it for us. Okay, so I'll go. So it starts by saying that even a 5-year-old knows what the right thing to do is. But even a 50-year-old, and especially a 50-year-old, often lacks the courage to do it. An act of courage may involve a risk. For example, a fireman needs courage to enter a burning building to rescue those trapped inside. An act of courage, such as confessing a crime one has committed, may invite punishment. An act of courage, such as whistleblowing, may invite revenge. Doing what is right frequently means stepping out of our comfort zone. Courage is the inner strength required to do what is right, even if it is uncomfortable. So these last two lines specifically, you're always wanting to know what, say, courage is, what something else, but it's always good to also know, what it's not and the different shades of what I'm looking at, because usually my definitions are very limited. Courage, if I think of courage, I might think of, again, a physical thing that has happened, an event, an occurring, somebody was, larger than life, for example. But here, when it's shared that courage is the inner strength required to do what is right, even if it is uncomfortable. And comfort is something that we really stress a lot of value on in today's, society, time and age. So this was good. I'll move further. Doing what is right, knowing fully well the risks involved, is one type of courage. There are many other types of courage where there may be no serious risk involved. For example, saying something true but unpleasant to a friend needs courage. When the unpleasant truth will what when the unpleasant truth will do the friend no good, not saying it may need still greater courage. Courage may reside in action, courage may reside in inaction. So again, I think it helps to expand our definitions if we need definitions, and we mostly do. So again, we are always looking for big picture things, big things, and yet the everyday courage, courage in our everyday life, like here it's being shared that when telling something to a friend, to a sister, to a brother, to family, knowing that it might hurt them, knowing that they might get angry, knowing that they might be upset and they might not want to talk to you, especially at least for a few days. And yet, rocking that boat needs courage. And where not to rock it, that discernment needs courage. So, courage may reside in action, courage may reside in inaction. So, this also reminds me of the quote from Winston Churchill that we had seen, I think, last time, where he says that it requires courage to, get up and act, and it also requires courage to sit down and listen. Yeah. Again, please feel free to unmute anytime. I don't usually like just, I'm the only one talking. It feels strange, especially in a sharing circle. Okay. So, courage is required for not taking action when it is very tempting to act. I think this for me also was, our anger, our reactions, our unacceptance, non-acceptance of things that are there. And every time I'm reacting to the same thing. It feels very strange when we say that, but we all do. I mean, at least I do. So, courage is required for not taking action when it is very tempting to act. Once a child complained to the mother of being bullied by a classmate. He told the mother that he felt like punching that boy. The boy was not actually punching, probably he was afraid of the teacher. The mother asked him whether it was more difficult to punch him or to forgive him. The child said it was more difficult to forgive than to give way to the impulse. The mother told him that since he was a brave boy, he should do what is more difficult. This again goes a bit contrary to how we in general lead our life. We choose the easy, the comfortable, mostly. And yoga always tells us to do what is more difficult so that things can be transcended, so that I can overcome, myself, my limitations, and extend them again and again. I remember, Jet Sunmala Tenzin Palmo, she had shared once that once she was out of the cave after some time, she had two options. Either she could build the monastery, the nunnery that she did, or she could go back into silent retreat. And she met a monk, yogi, and she asked him, what should she do? And he asked, what seems more difficult? What seems more challenging? What is it that you don't want to do? And she said, I don't want to build the nunnery. Like she had no money, no experience, no skill set, nothing. And the yogi said that then you do what you don't want to do because then you will transcend your limitations. And that's what she did. So, just repeating, the mother told him that since he was a brave boy, he should do what is more difficult. The mother was trying to teach the child that if somebody has hurt us, it requires greater courage to forgive than to hit back. The mother was trying to take the child from the restraint due to fear towards restraint born in forgiveness. But restraint of fear is easy. And that's why usually we use that restraint when we are, when we have young children. I've often heard, especially in India, like if you're walking in a mall and a child is walking here and there, I've heard people say that, that person would come or, that monster would come if you would leave us and run away. And the child then sticks near to their parents. But that is easy, right? But what it does to the child, we don't see. We just see our comfort right now. So the mother was trying to take the child from the restraint due to fear towards restraint born in forgiveness. I don't hit because I don't want to, not because I'm scared that if I hit, I'll be scolded. So forgiveness is an act of courage. If we keep away from hitting back simply because we are afraid, the failure to act is either cowardice or pragmatism. But it certainly is neither courage nor forgiveness. Genuine forgiveness is based not on fear but love. Fear needs two, the one who fears and another of whom one is afraid. Fear not only needs two, it also needs an acute awareness of the two being two. Love also needs two, the one who loves and another who's loved. Love needs two, but it arises from the two feeling as if they are one. That's beautiful. Yeah, I'll go further on. When a person who is patently wrong is confronted, what is the most common response? The most common response is to go on the defensive to justify oneself. The defense is unconvincing, the justification is hollow, the person knows it, and yet he goes on arguing. A classic example of this type is the way most people behave when caught cheating on the partner. They deny the charge, they defend their behavior, they do everything except admit the mistake and apologize. What is behind such behavior? Is the person's ego transcending the ego? And admitting one's mistake is an act of courage. I read it wrong. So, what is behind such behavior is the person's ego. Transcending the ego and admitting one's mistake is an act of courage. So, this is a very good, even like I've seen it before. There is this quote of Mother that to admit one's mistake, to admit where one, has gone wrong is an act of courage. Because ego would not let us do that. So Gary Zukov has summed up the essence of courage in a simple sentence. Courage is required when will and fear intersect. You want to do something and you're scared of it. So that's when that interaction, that transaction happens, then courage is required. If the willpower is so strong that fear can be ignored, the person acquires the courage to do what he wants to do. So when the will is strong, I can ignore the fear. If the fear of consequence overpowers the will, the person loses the courage required for doing what he wants to do. This broad perspective enables us to look at a wide spectrum of courage, not all of which is desirable and much of which is not spiritual. Throwing a shoe at a leader may seem an act of courage, but is foolhardy. It takes courage to do a stunt for a movie, but that may be done just to make a living. Climbing the Everest is an act of courage, but it may be driven by the desire to be admired, to win name and fame. A child may jump into an ice cold pool when its other friends are doing so, just to be accepted by the peer group. So, this is tying up with what we were discussing last time over JK's quote about how courage can also be used to just block fear. So it was coming down to the center of operation that I'm doing something which looks brave. But what is the reason why I'm doing it? And when I look at somebody's picture who has climbed the Everest, I don't even see he would want to be admired. I just say, oh my God, wow, for example. But everybody has their motives. And I do have my motives, so I can, be more aware, more reflective of that. So that is courageous, but it is not a spiritual act. But if a child jumps into an ice cold pool to save someone who's drowning, that would be a spiritual act. When Krishnan, who had a job offer from a five-star hotel in Switzerland, decided not to go there a week before he was to leave India so that he could feed the hungry homeless people of Madurai, it was an act of spiritual courage. In short, what makes courage spiritual is the motive behind the act and its consequences. If the motive is love and the result is a rise of consciousness, the courage is spiritual in character. Choices rooted in love, choices rooted in true love bring with them the courage required to act. This happens because these choices are endorsed by the psychic being. The psychic being is a divine essence. The divine is not only all knowing, it is also all powerful. Because of its all knowing character, the choice that is given to us by our inner voice, originating from the psychic being, is extremely clear. It leaves us with no doubt about what the right thing to do is. Because of the all powerful character of the divine, if we decide to act on the voice of the psychic being, we also acquire the courage to act upon it. So, a lot of times, we make the decisions, we feel that this is the right thing to do or I must do it, and we find ourselves still not doing it. So here we are being told that if what you are trying to follow is the voice of psychic, then you also get the courage with it to do it. It is the psychic courage that makes it easy for Krishnan not only to give up a lucrative job, but also to defy his parents and other well-wishers. The psychic courage makes it easy for the person to stand up to the whole world if necessary. Yeah, I think we should stop. It's quite long. Okay, we are just almost at the end only. So anything before we take the last para?
Yes, if you go,
Oh, please.
Yeah, Dia, would you want to go first and then Juan can go?
okay, if you can go back to that sentence
Mhm.
where it says that will intersects fear.
Yeah.
That's a very interesting thing.
Where did it go?
I think it was towards the end of one of the paragraphs, second or third. Okay. Courage is the inner strength required to.
Yeah, this is different, but
It's different. So what it actually says is when will and fear is intersecting, then we need courage to overcome the fear of losing. I think that's what the sentence is.
yeah, so yeah, that's what it was. So basically it was what it was saying was that okay, you are at a place where you want to do something, but you are scared of doing something, right? So you're wanting to do that, and the fear from inside, from society, what would he say, she say, what would happen to me? That's the fear, right? So it blocks. So this is the intersection.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if the will is stronger, it will cross, right? But if the fear is stronger, then forget it, it's not, I don't want it that badly also, right? So if the fear is stronger, we make excuses or we just become silent and we withdraw. So that is the intersection, I think, that was being
Yeah.
spoken.
The question comes here is which is the more natural state for us human? Is it the courage that we are born with courage, or is it the fear that we are born with some fear? And courage is something that we develop over time. Courage is cultivated and fear is the natural state.
Yeah,
Or
that's a
maybe
good
both of them
question.
are there, yeah, in us to different levels.
Yeah. Would anybody like to respond to that? Reflect on it. What is a natural state, courage or fear?
It's a good question indeed. I really don't know, but I believe when we are children, we are probably more in touch with our psychic when we are little. So I tend to think we are naturally more courageous. We are not naturally fearful of danger. I think fear is more like a learned thing. And probably we, as adults, we have to recover this courage because many experiences, probably from a very early childhood that we cannot even remember, imprint on our psyche, some fears. I don't know if this is
Okay.
true.
Thanks, Yon. I think that's a very good answer that courage is something we are born with, and fear develops with different experiences, conditioning, etc.
Yes, thank you. But there are, like you said, there are different answers or they're depending on the different situations. I remember when my child was maybe 3, he was scared to go from one room to the other at night, even if the lights were on. And then I'd ask somebody that I have never consciously said anything that should make him scared. You know, like people say that, oh, this will happen, that will happen, or give fear, use fear as a tool. And I've never done that. So why is he still scared? So I'd actually asked, Acharya Prashant this question, and he had said that, there's so much, like, how mother talks about some fears in the cell. So there are fears that we are even born with that we have to transcend. And yet children are so natural and just blowing like the wind here and there. And we are like, you will fall, you will slip, you will get cold, or you will get hurt. So that is something we do too. And there are some things we are also carrying. So for each and every situation, in a similar situation, for one person, what seems like courage would comes like so naturally to the other. And in a different situation, the same person would feel that no, I can't do this, and the one who was fearful in something else would say, oh, there's nothing at all in this, right? So if we move beyond the definitions of what is courage, how we were just reading, right, that in each and every form the courage is there. It would depend on situation to this situation and one's own being, what one is, and yeah, that's what comes to me.
I have a friend here, very special friend. She practicing Buddhist and very long time. And when she has 2 kids, and the younger one is I think every time I go to their house, I learn from the child. I feel, my God, very special soul. And he is so afraid. He would, like, I don't know, it's not that what he does, but he has that certainty in him, whatever he's doing, so confident, just like 6 or 7 years old. And he, from think that, oh my God, such a small child is doing such a big thing. And the mother as well. Like she is like, of course, that's because. And I remember I asked her that how he's like that. And I asked her that how he's not afraid, or how he's so certain in him. Not only his aura is like that when he's around, he will not be afraid about anything that's happening. And she told me that I don't know why is it, but one of the things that I think has resulted into it is how he was born. So she said that her first pregnancy was really hard, and the hospital environment, and she had a very bad labor. And she said that when the second child was born, of course, that time I was, I was just starting on my spiritual journey as well. So, and then when we decided to have him, I decided to go for a home birth. That I would actually, and I was hounded by so many of my relatives and this thing, because my first pregnancy was really bad. They had to induce labor, and it was so hard. For a very long time I was in labor. And because of that, I think there's a lot of trauma I have induced on my own child. Because, she told me something that was very beautiful, that I feel that is very important in what kind of a state that you're bringing a child into this world, because that is very important. And she works with kids as well, some of her work. So from experience she says that. And she says that I was very conscious that when my second child is going to be born, I am not going to bring him in a hospital environment where everybody is so anyways afraid, and always trying interventions as a way of making such natural experience look artificial. and it was a difficult pregnancy. Doctor also said that I would advise you, because the first was very difficult, you should go for this. But she told me that and she did hypnobirthing and different things. And she told me that when I was so conscious that I will not be afraid when he was coming into this life and everything. And he said everything was so smooth and beautiful. and she advocates for home birthing now. And she says, and when he was born, there was a special bond between both of us, because I was with every pain, with every cramp, with everything that I was having, I was very certain that I'm not going to be afraid. I'm going to believe that my child has the capacity to know and make his way through. He's a warrior. And like how kids come out, like their first journey itself shows that the strength and certitude they have, that I know that I can come out. And she says, and I think that's because of that I've seen from the moment he's born. He's very confident in everything we do together. That was very interesting about this when you asked this. I just reminded me of that conversation that Attar was saying, that cells have fear, but environment also have fear, and which environment do we raise kids in really impacts that.
Yes, Nandini, thank you. And I have shared this before. Once I had read a book on breath work, and they were talking about traumas. And it said that, how the child is born, like if it's a cesarean birth, if it's a home birth, if it's a hospital birth, if people are talking too much if he's born, if there's too much light when he is born, if there is, I don't know, too much cold if it's born, this is the trauma, this is the trauma, this is the trauma. So it felt as if we have a natural attraction towards trauma, and the journey is transcending that. So it did say that, in a natural birth, the child has inculcated courage, because he had to find his way, he had to do the courage, and while a cesarean was just, picked up and voila, you are there, you take life easy. Yeah, so a beautiful reminder, and again, very interesting how we are always looking, not looking, but feeling the trauma, catching it, and we have to, yeah.
And I remember this, my mom always advocated for a cesarean. She used to think a woman has to really endure a lot of pain during normal. And my grandmother used to say that, but how will mother have that love for the child if she's not gone through that pain? And I used to say, oh my God, what rubbish. And now, in that sense, I don't. But now that I listen and hear different things, I actually say it has a meaning. Not in that sense, how she said, but a deeper meaning.
Yeah. But I think it again depends on whether I am open to receiving the deeper meaning, right? Like Juan, you was yesterday talking about conscious suffering, right? So that is like while you're suffering, you're conscious. You have not lost your center. You understand what's happening. And because usually something is thrown at me and I start crying that, oh my God, I'm hurt. And how is God so cruel, or how is this person so cruel? And I go into the storylines and I lose the essence. So while a person is giving birth, Nandini, like 9 out of 10 women are just cursing their husbands or cursing life, and so then it's no use, right? But like you said, was saying about your friend, that's very beautiful. So it also depends on what I am ready to receive or see while I'm being, polished or rubbed or going through whatever labor that life throws at me. Yeah. To what Juan had shared, I couldn't just, it's been on my mind since then. Anytime anything I'm doing, that word keeps coming, conscious suffering, conscious suffering. And there's so much courage needed to be conscious when you are suffering. Like when I look at myself, again, this thing about comfort. Like I had a very protected childhood, and the parents were very loving and caring and protecting, and so anytime anything hard happens, like if I have to work hard or if I had to, be uncomfortable, everybody was like, oh my God, what's happening to you? Why are you going through so much? Kind of a thing. So it's something about being uncomfortable, being in pain, suffering, that makes you just start complaining or cribbing or feeling like a victim. And that has always, that always takes away the what the experience is trying to teach you, or what you are, I don't know, what you're being tried to be built to. You lose that because you're so busy complaining or feeling sorry for yourself. So once we have done those, complainings or feeling sorry is enough, then yeah, with consciousness, suffering can be a beautiful, and it is a beautiful, beautiful teacher.
Yes, some time ago I was listening to Jordan Peterson, which is a psychologist from Canada, in fact. He sometimes says something interesting, and he was talking about the example of Christ and the crucifixion and the symbols of that, and he said something like that, like, the measure of oneself has to do with how much suffering are you willing to accept, on your own. And well, I don't know if that's how I think, but it's an interesting thing to think about, like how much of how much suffering are we willing to accept without projecting into another one, like blaming, and this idea again, like if I have to suffer something, just how much I am willing to take, and not to try to put on someone else's shoulder. It's definitely it requires courage to do that.
Yeah, I didn't realize I was mute. So we will read the last passage now and just finish this. In case anybody has the capacity to read, they can unmute. Otherwise, I will. Yeah.
Yes. One of the three pillars of sadhana on the spiritual path is rejection. Rejection of everything that is an obstacle on the path. The obstacles are more within than outside. The obstacles are more within than outside. All the negative tendencies arising from the ego, such as desires, anger, greed, attachment, arrogance, and jealousy, need to be rejected and should be replaced by their opposites. But we are so attached to our negative tendencies that it takes great courage to root them out. Thus, being on the spiritual path is itself an act of great courage. Being on the spiritual path shown by the mother and Sri Aurobindo is an act of still greater courage because their path does not insist on renunciation of worldly life. Rather, it encourages engaging with the world with love and compassion. Their path does not have a one path fits all approach. On their path, each seeker has to carve out her own path. Their path is not the well trodden path. It is an adventure into uncharted territory. Their path is not for individual salvation, it is for individual transformation aimed at collective upliftment. Therefore, their path is not for the timid or faint hearted. Hence, one of the prayers that the Mother has given us reads, "Make of us the hero warriors we aspire to become. May we fight successfully the great battles of the future that is to be born against the past that seeks to endure, so that the new things may manifest and we may be ready to receive them." Ma'am, can you scroll up a little bit, please? I just want to read one line there. Yes, that's yes, okay. The obstacles are within, then outside. All the negative tendencies arising from the ego, such as desires, anger, greed, attachment, arrogance, and jealousy, need to be rejected and should be replaced by their opposites. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So, courage again, like you were saying, it's mostly considered physical. That's the first image that comes to us. And yet, since more obstacles are within than outside, the true courage that we need is to, stand against our own tendencies, own flow, own egos, own desires and attachments. And we need to reject them as much as we can in our own capacities. So this part I feel really speaks to me that we are so attached to our negative tendencies that it takes great courage to root them out. Because somehow it feels that how do I not do this? This is me. Like, how do I not? So it's like, stopping the flow of the Ganges sometimes, that it seems that it's unstoppable, or it has my tendencies, my patterns, my habits have become me. And it's like if somebody points out that, this is not okay or you can do better. At times I've had this feeling that, oh my God, it's like, taking my skin out of me. I don't know how to do that stepping back or that detachment or that indifference or that. So just this acknowledgement that I am attached to my way of thinking, my way of being, my preferences, how I think life should be, helps me at least to know that, oh, this will happen, right? Okay, I am standing against my own self and this will happen. So that makes it easier. I'm not caught by surprise. Yeah. So anything on the last para before we take up something else?
I totally relate with what you said. Sometimes I think some circumstances require us to something that feels like erasing yourself or breaking yourself and be something else. It feels like what I am accustomed to be, to feel, to think. It doesn't work. It requires from me another thing, and I don't know how to yeah. What am I? All this that I am accustomed to feel as my own, as myself. Mm.
Yeah.
I also resonated a lot with the line that the path of integral yoga is not a one size fit approach for everybody. Everyone has to create their own path, and it's a very unique direction that everyone takes. And it's very courageous. I think that's what courage is, because you have to really listen to your dharma, and my dharma could be very different from yours. I remember before committing myself to a long-term relationship, I was very much deeply contemplating if I want this, or maybe I would like to go in Pondicherry and live there. Maybe that's my life calling. Maybe this is not. There was a lot of turmoil for a year, I remember, and I went to Pondicherry, stayed there for a while, spoke with many people, meditated to know the answer, and um, I remember in Samadhi I had a very kind of some experience, but I I spoke with somebody, and he just like the sadhak there, Ranganatha, and I spoke with him and I said, I don't know what to do. I mean, I want to stay here. Maybe I don't want to go. And I feel like outside world is very hard to practice. And he gave me an example that he gave me a visualization. I think it was from Life Divine, but he gave me his own visualization. He said that think of an aeroplane that's trying to rise, and there are winds that really obstructed the winds that's out that's from the opposite direction that comes, right? And what do you think they do? They actually help the aeroplane to take the flight high because it uses it to rise above. Still, it was a long conversation, but that thing stayed with me. And he said, that is what the outside world is. And he said, I'm not saying that you should live outside or live here. I can't give you the answer. This is the answer between you and the mother, and you have to figure out. But thinking that these days I hear with youngsters that marriage is not okay, or spiritual path, not being married, or not being in a long-term relationship, some not married, but that is quite fancy, and it's like sadhana. But you have to listen to your own true self. For some people the true self is to stay here and not commit to any other relationship but the relationship with the divine. That was their true self. Whereas for the other person, their calling would be to actually commit different, they would do involved in human relationship and find the divine and manifest that divinity. Try to. It's hard, it's much harder. But he also gave me the example of Nalini Das, he spoke a lot about human love and finding divine through that. And he said, for other people, it could be that. So don't go into the that stereotype. Don't stereotype it. You have to really find and seek the path, because if you're gonna go against, he didn't use the dharma, but I'll say, but if you're gonna go against the dharma that you have, that if you're meant to be in human, outside and maybe get married and have relationship, and you stay here, then it won't be that fulfilling. On the other hand, if you're meant to be here, and if you do that, that won't be justice. So he said that this is the answer that only come between. But believe me, mother is there everywhere, and no matter what you choose, she's going to love you. In fact, love you more when you're outside, because she knows that those people need. And that thing really calmed me down, So that thing that everyone, that's so true, that we all have our own path. And integral yoga specifically says that we are very unique and we have to manifest the divine in our own ways that we have. It's not one way. So, and it's very courageous. It's not easy. So courage is that to listen to your dharma. The biggest courage is that, actually, and live that life.
Yeah, and to even be connected, even briefly, to what one's dharma is, we get confused, right? That's why we are so backward, because we don't know what is our true dharma, what is right, what is wrong. But yeah, this is like wherever you go, you are guided. And so we spend so much time in making decisions, wanting to do the things that are right, that we miss life. There was this beautiful passage, I don't know, from Sri Aurobindo, don't remember the exact one, where he says that, wanting to do the right thing is also, the stress that you take that I want to do right, right, that's also wrong. Don't do that. Like, yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah. So there was a short video, very small, from Jeff Foster. I like that. It was about being present and it was related to courage. We can watch that and see if there are any reflections. Oh, I don't think I shared the sound. I share it again. Yeah, let me know if you're not able to hear it.
Yeah, not feeling seen is one of the most uncomfortable feelings of all. So it does, and it takes some courage. It takes some courage to stay with that feeling, which is you may not know you have courage. That's the thing. Sometimes it takes other people to tell you have courage. It's not like you're sitting there telling yourself, oh, I'm so courageous, I'm so courageous, I'm so courageous. And also sometimes it takes courage to not have courage. So that courage is, just to be clear, courage is not brute strength. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is some kind of willingness to be present, basically. Courage is very much linked to presence. There is only courage in presence. Courage, not as the absence of fear or the absence of doubt. Those are often those are the kinds of heroes that we're presented with. That's the kind of courage we're presented with in the movies. Is the strong, too often male hero who feels no fear and feels no doubt, and that's not real courage. That's something else. The true courage is actually, it's the willingness to feel fear and to feel doubt, the willingness to stay with these very uncomfortable feelings of not loved, unworthy, which is a very old feeling. And at that point, 99% of the people in the world would run away. They'd try and distract themselves or go and buy something, or go and eat something, or blame. So quickly we go into blame. So it takes some courage to stay. There's courage there in the staying. And yeah, you're right. Sometimes we don't feel able to stay. We don't know how. But I think it takes some courage to admit that.
Yeah. Anything, any reflection on what we just heard?
It was really interesting, and I think he says something that relates to some things we were talking, like this conscious suffering, the willingness to be open. Even in the text, it said something, or somewhere you said something like it takes courage to sit and listen, and it's part of the same, like to listen, for example, to someone. It takes courage because we have to be open. We have to accept something that maybe we don't like, we don't want to hear. It will crash with our map of life, of what we want reality to be. So yes, maybe it would be more than suffering consciously. It would be to I like that idea, that to be present and open to whatever it is. It takes courage. Really, really interesting. It gets me thinking.
Yeah, thank you. I also like, what he spoke about distraction. That how we don't want to be there because it's too hard to be there, right? And we don't know how. And at times it's okay to not be there and just move, because sometimes the repulsion, it's like, sometimes when I have to take up something new, or I know this is something I have to give up, first I see especially the vital, the physical vital, it repulses so strong that I just have to step back for a few days. Because if I just, it would not let me, like it would just be like, it would be a absolute rebel, like with nausea and vomiting and headaches. So my regular course of action is I just step back, and then when it knows that, okay, it has won, then I just slowly go into it, and then it's much a smoother sailing. So this distractions that we do also, I feel, is a good thing when we realize what's happening and how I'm just not wanting to be there. And a lot of times I do miss out on certain things because I preferred being distracted and comfortable than present and uncomfortable.
It also spoke me with the quote that I think I shared with the word GK, where I was very interesting. Where it says courage is actually a resistance towards fear. So, and it was very interesting how he used courage with entertainment, and I think was one more thing. And I think when I was thinking about it, how is it that we don't see courage as a resistance to fear, but then it is true, right? That we see courage and fear as binary, that there is fear and you have to be courageous. So
Mm.
you always use it as a resistance. But here it's beautiful. He says that courage is actually being present. So
Mm.
even if you are afraid, to be present and know that I'm afraid is courageous. You don't have to, like you said, you don't have to overcome it. There's a maybe step back, or at least acknowledge that, okay, this is something that I'm really afraid. Because we're not actually, I remember, these days, people who are, left in my family, I usually ask them that, how would you like your death to be? And there's a lot of resistance. Like, what would you like when you die? Or would you like, what would be your choices? If would you like to be put on a ventilator? All these things. And people, little bit like, um, some of the times they feel, but of course, but family members really get uptight about it. That because there's so much fear that this person will die, but that's true. But I mean, to be present amongst them is such a thing. So that was really good. It could actually draw the connections between what Krishnamurti said and what Jeff Foster is saying. It's not vis-a-vis fear, but it's actually
Yeah.
being present.
We had discussed this. Thank you for sharing that. We had discussed it in length in last week's session, and it was very helpful. And we came to the center of courage. A lot of times we pretend to be courage because we don't want to come across as failures. So that also was an element that we had touched based on what you had shared from JK. Yeah. Mm. So we either isolate or we distract or we just fake courage to just get over that, and yeah, which is good. So it's already 1 hour, but just maybe if we have 5-10 more minutes, we'll just look at more things. If anybody has to leave, please do. But we can end the topic today, but just a few things that would shed more light before we end today. So there's another quote from Mother. If anybody has the capacity to read, they can please read it for us.
Breaking free from the customary way of thinking. It is sometimes so difficult for us to learn to think for ourselves. We hesitate to change anything whatsoever in our customary way of thinking, which is most often made up of social conventions and collective suggestions. For our whole existence is based upon this habit. It takes a great courage and a great love of progress to consent to examine one's existence in the light of thoughts that are deeper and consequently more independent of the customs and usages of the environment.
Yes, thank you, Nandini. So nothing new. We have been touching on this, from, other thing from mother. And again, sometimes we need this repetition that when I go against my customs, it takes courage. And that is where progress is, because otherwise I remain a very limited person, live a limited life and die a limited life with my habits and patterns. So there's one more from Arya. So there was a whole article, but this quote was nice. Anybody who wants to just read it for us?
Whosoever seeks to climb from level to level up the hill of the divine, fearing nothing, deterred by no retardation or defeat, shrinking from no vastness because it is too vast for his intelligence, no height because it is too high for his spirit, no greatness because it is too great for his force and courage. He is the Aryan, the divine fighter, the victor, the nobleman, Aristos, best, the Shrestha of the Gita. It's beautiful. Will you share this, Taru, on the group?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, this aspect that shrinking from no vastness because it is too vast for his intelligence, no height because it is too high for his spirit, no greatness because it is too great for the force and courage. He is the Aryan. This is very beautiful because we see how we stop ourselves, right? Like I stop myself that I won't be able to do this or that, or yeah, fearing nothing, deterred by no retardation or defeat. So if I am defeated or if I feel I have failed, courage is not that I should have won. Courage is I say, oh, I failed and I go again. Oh, I failed and I go again. So when I'm climbing from level to level up to the hill of the divine, up the hill of the divine, fear, if I fear nothing and if I am not, deterred by, we get demotivated very soon. We say, oh, I would not be able to do that. Oh, I'm not good enough. Oh, I'm too weak. Oh, I'm doing it again. Oh, I couldn't stand up to whatever thing that I thought I need standing up to. And yet, courage is not winning, it's the ability to keep going on no matter how many times I have failed, because I really have to go far. Yeah, so beautiful. There's one more. Yeah, Jagan, you wanted to read?
Yes. One who has not the courage to face patiently and firmly life. One second, I'll read one more time. One who has not the courage to face patiently and firmly life and its difficulties will never be able to go through the still greater inner difficulties of the sadhana. The very first lesson in this yoga is to face life and its trials with a quiet mind, a firm courage, and an entire reliance on the divine Shakti. Sri Aurobindo, Letters on Yoga.
Yeah, thank you. So this again is touching upon, how if I'm just, how say when Rumi says that if you shout, if you cry out at every rub, how will you be polished, my dear? So it's the same thing that if in life, the smallest, biggest things that are coming my way, they totally move me and I'm doing somersaults of what's happening and why is it happening to me? How will I be able to, have the courage when I'm, on this path and I have to go inside and there's so many difficulties, so many lower movements. So he's pointing out for our need for more quietude, more silence, more faith, more reliance. on the divine. So if when I'm able to do it in my everyday to whatever capacity I'm able to do, that would help me in progressing there too. Like, yeah, so this is the one that we had also shared before. So there is no greater courage than that of recognizing one's own mistakes. So usually when I recognize my mistake, I just go like, oh my God, why is it happening to me? But to recognize and say, not again, or yes, I will do something about it also is the courage. So I think that's about it. And maybe we can just go through this few lines that were there on this session, and we'll end the session then. So if anybody wants to quickly read it, that would be great. Yeah, I'll just go. So it says, something in me helps me stand tall. Someone in me does not fear the falls. A power within always holds my hand. It propels me forward. It helps me expand. My comfort zones keep me submerged in mud. My compromises, my greed live on my blood. For some, the ordinary, the mundane is enough. Others choose growth, no matter how tough. Courage helps me stand against my own flow. When life stops me, courage propels me to go. When expected to say yes, it helps me say no. Defying all fears, courage helps me grow. So, with this note, we can end the session. So, thanking Grace, thanking the Divine for the courage to look at the courage and what all it takes, what all courage is. So, thanking for all the blessings in my life and aspiring and praying for more courage in my everyday for myself and everyone, so that we all can transcend the limitations, the self-imposed limitations that we, with choice, although it appears to be choiceless, on me, around me, within and without. Thank you.